Limerence by devdevlin, read by LMX Mabella. 5. Tom has never been one for gambling, but if he were, he would bet that it is her first detention. Miss Granger enters the defense classroom at 7 p.m. sharp on Friday evening and doesn't greet him. The sound of her shoes dragging on the stone follows her with each step, and Tom smiles at her sullen features. She lingers by the back of the room and goes to place her bag on one of the tables in the back row. No. His voice leaves no room for question. Sit here. Opposite him on his desk, he has cleared a space for her, and he pats it invitingly. She remains where she is for a long while before she quietly sighs. He smiles as if she isn't telling him she wants to murder him with her eyes and says, "You have a wonderful timing, Miss Granger. I do hope you had dinner before you came, because I dare say we'll be here for quite some time." She blinks at him blankly and drops her things, lowering into the chair opposite him. "For your detention this evening," he continues, pushing a tall stack of parchment from his side of the desk into the space between them, "I would like for you to assist me in grading these." To her, he knows the opportunity to grade the work of other students is just as tempting as dinner scraps are to a dog, and at the sight of the pile, he sees her lips twitch. "My second-year Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw class have submitted only today their half-yearly assessment. 2 feet on the methods of distinction between ghost and ghoul." He doesn't miss the way Miss Granger straightens and eyes the parchment, grudgingly curious. "If I remember correctly, you received full marks for your own all those years ago. Wonderfully written." At this compliment, she blinks and forces her eyes off of the pile, squares her jaw. "And I don't suppose you've considered that it might be slightly unfair to your students having them mocked by me?" He hasn't heard her voice in more than a day, and the anger in it makes his clothes feel tight. He swallows and says, "Not at all," before he passes her a quill. They start working together then, and they do it without much in the way of conversation. Their quills scratch together, the tall clock ticks away behind them, and every now and then she asks a stiffly worded question. What if they've gotten the idea right, but haven't expressed it very well? These two have used the same sentences. Should I take marks? A few times there are not questions at all. This one is completely off topic. I can't read this handwriting. This one doesn't have a name. Each time he answers her queries politely, and each time his hands tighten around his thigh. But an hour in, and she quietens. She learns from his answers, quick as ever, and they grade essays together silently. Tom has had many students in his classroom for detention over the years, far too many to count. Typically, the nights are long, awkward even, and they might be his least favorite part of teaching. But this one he quite enjoys, and he enjoys it because of her. She works quickly, efficiently, but he can see that she is on fire. He knows it because of the narrowing of her eyes, the puckering of her lips, the hasty pace at which she writes, the scrawls she makes when she reads a particularly bothersome statement. It is amusing, and it makes him want to press his hand into her skin. He watches her when she's not watching him, and he enjoys every minute of it. 2 hours go by before he slips up. It is an accident. He doesn't mean to. It slips from him without intention, and the promptness of it nearly surprises himself. "Why were you in the dungeons?" Hermione jolts, glancing up from her marking, and the skin on the bridge of her nose folds to form soft wrinkles. "Pardon?" He leans closer. "What was it that drove you away from the dinner that night? That night you found me in the dungeons?" Her scowl doesn't move. I was looking for you," she says, as though the idea is repulsive. "I wanted clarification on my—" She looks at the pile of parchments and laughs lightly, but it is not at all genuine. "On my own essay. On why you gave me a 14. You weren't at dinner, and you weren't in your office, so I looked around and—" She shakes her head, and now it is Tom's skin that wrinkles. For a while he'd allowed himself to believe that she'd known. about the basilisk, about the mudbloods, about him, and that she'd intentionally sought him out, intentionally caught him in the act, but he can see it. It is in her repulsion, her anger, the clear sense of betrayal she's been wearing since that night. She's not lying. And what she'd said, it is unexpected. It is innocent. She had caught him in what had been a game of chance, and she lost it. And now, she's stuck. He doesn't mean to laugh, but he does. You were skipping what is arguably Hogwarts' finest dinner of the year to see me about schoolwork? The skin on Granger's cheeks darkened. I just thought it was just incredibly unfair of you, I mean. You gave Malfoy a 15. He snorts. At that, Tom Riddle actually snorts, and following the sound, he feels an uncomfortable prickling beneath the skin of his face, warm and foreign. But that, her innocent, simple reason for venturing away from safety and catching him in the midst of committing murder, it is almost like fate. And she is. And then he's laughing. He cannot stop, and it's just like the heat that she started, the one festering under his skin. And she is so. Oh, I'm so very glad that you agreed to our vow, Miss Granger, he says in between his laughs, and she is rearing back from him now. I would have hated to have killed you. Her chest is moving visibly. She's blinking away what look like tears, and she's looking at him like she wants to run. And when she does, he doesn't stop her. He lets her go, and after she is gone, he leans back and breathes, as though he is starving. She has taken the air with her, he thinks, as he removes his tie. She has taken the air and left her fire beneath his skin, and he's burning. He doesn't sleep that night, and it is because of her. Her puckered lips, her reddened skin, her heaving chest. He is a mess that night, and it is because of her. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of Limerence by devdevlin, read by LMX Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, AO3, Instagram, or Tumblr.